Auntie Bells wasn't my real auntie, or anyone else's for that matter. I'm not even sure if she had any real family at all. That was just what everybody called her. She'd been a fixture in this neighborhood since long before I was born. I couldn't find a single person who didn't know at least of her. She was something of a living legend, crazy cat lady type, without the cats. It wasn't unusual to look out your window in the dead of night and see Auntie Bells shuffling down the street in the moonlight, big walking stick in hand. And if you didn't see her, you'd hear her. You'd hear them soft at first. As she kept closer up the walk, they'd get louder and louder, and then they'd start to fade away the further away she went on down the road. Auntie Bells took her name from the bracelets that she wore on both wrists. Strands of twine ran through the countless number of tiny bells. They tinkled with her every movement. The first time I saw her, I was a small child. My family had just moved onto the street, and I was playing in our front yard while Mom unpacked inside. The sound, so gentle and enchanting, did not match its source. When I looked up, I found myself staring at what could only be a wicked witch from one of my storybooks. Dressed in heavy swatches of black, Auntie Bells had come to a standstill at the foot of our driveway and was just watching me, any expression lost in the heavy wrinkles of her face, and with all certainty of someone about to be lured back to the gingerbread house and eaten, I started to cry. And immediately my mother flew out of the house. By the time she reached me, though, Auntie Bells had already toddled off further on down the road. And whenever I heard the tinkle of bells through my open window at night, I threw my comforter over my head and kept my eyes squeezed shut until they'd faded into the distance. We got our first introduction to Auntie Bells at a block party about a week later. She wasn't invited, or at least she didn't attend, but we saw her walking slowly by, her gaze traveling over all the little children running about. My mom frowned and turned to our neighbor, Betsy. "Who is that?" she asked, nodding towards the old woman. "Oh, don't mind her. That's just Auntie Bells." Family of yours?" "No, that's just a nickname. I'm not sure I even know her real name." "Well, whatever you want to call her, she's creepy." "Oh, she's harmless. She's just a bit eccentric." "Well, I don't like the way she's looking at the kids." "Oh, we've never had a problem with her." My mom made a displeased sound in the back of her throat and ushered me away, out of Auntie Bells' line of sight. Despite my mom's initial distrust of Auntie Bells, she really never did cause any problems. It still took a long time to get over being unsettled by her, but she never bothered us, and we got used to seeing her around at all hours, day and night. As I got a little older, I even started to feel a bit sorry for her. Here was this elderly woman who never seemed to have any friends or family to care for her. She just wandered the same neighborhood she apparently had spent her whole life in. After seeing her pass by one morning and getting a pang of secondhand loneliness, I walked across the street to say hi to Ellen, our spunky grandmother neighbor who was kneeling in her garden. "Morning, Miss Ellen." "Oh, hi, Paula." "Hey." Ellen sat back on her heels with some effort and tipped her wide brim hat back. You've been here a long time, right, Miss Helen? Oh, sure, probably going on 45 years now. And Auntie Bells, has she been here even longer? At the mention of Auntie Bells' name, the warmth faded just slightly from Ellen's round face. Yes. How come you and her aren't friends? You both lived here a long time. Shouldn't you be friends? Oh, just never happened, I suppose. She just seems so lonely. Yes, well, that happens sometimes when you get old. And something in her voice told me that our conversation was over. After that, I took it upon myself to try to be nicer to Auntie Bells. Didn't seem right that she was always alone. I'd hear her coming, and I'd go out and say hi to her, ask her how she was doing, and sometimes even walk a bit with her. She never acknowledged me much beyond a small nod, and at first my presence seemed to stiffen her. I'd catch her staring at me out of the corner of her eye, wary and suspicious. Gradually she started to relax and allowed me to join her with so much as a sideways glance. Still, she never said much, but she let me ramble on, which felt good to a 12-year-old. I didn't get much chance to talk to a grown-up so openly. Mom still worried a bit about how safe it was for me to be alone with Auntie Bells. But since we never left our street and Mom could see me at all times from an upstairs window, she allowed it. I continued my walks with Auntie Bells for a number of years. I learned little of her in that time, but I liked her all the same. There was something comforting about her quiet, steady nature, although she never looked any less crone-like. But all the fears I'd once had of her were long gone. "Why all the bells?" I asked her one day. It was getting close to my college departure, and I figured if I didn't ask her then, I never would. Auntie Bells, now more wizened and slower than ever, gave me one of her thin, liver-spotted wrists a gentle shake. "One for each." "Each what?" But she didn't answer, and she never would. Not directly, anyway. Auntie Bells passed away less than 6 months later while I was away at school. No one even knew until my mom realized she hadn't seen her walking around for a few days. A wellness check found her sitting up in a recliner, already stiff and cold. "Poor Auntie," Mom said over the phone after the discovery. "No next of kin or anything. What's going to happen to her house and all her stuff?" "Oh, I really don't know. I guess they'll auction it all off." "Poor Auntie," I repeated, and the thought of strangers rifling through Auntie Bells' things really upset me. What if she had something private or personal she didn't want just anyone to find? Wouldn't be right to let strangers go trampling through her home and rifling through her things. I realized that Auntie Bells and I hadn't been close in a traditional sense, but I was the nearest thing to next of kin that she had, and I felt a responsibility to her. I left university that night after sending an email to my professors letting them know I'd had a death in the family. It was a long 3-hour drive, but when I pulled into the dark driveway of what had been Auntie Bells' home, I knew I'd made the right choice. Better to have someone who cared about her go in and preserve her memories than to let some stranger come in and dump it all in the trash. Auntie Bells' house was as tired and old as she had been. Years of poor upkeep had left it sagging and rotting in numerous places. I'd never been so close to it before, and had never known how deeply the disrepair had run. Even knowing that she lived in less than ideal conditions hadn't prepared me for this. Getting inside was easier than I had expected. The lock on the back door was broken, I assumed from the wellness check. I let myself in. The smell wasn't like anything I'd ever experienced before. I realized it was garbage and decay. With my phone held up like a flashlight, I picked my way carefully through the kitchen, stepping over mounds of trash and junk. The living room was a similar state, a hoarder's paradise of discarded containers and the kind of riffraff you'd find on the side of the road. The air felt heavy, greasy. I found it so difficult to breathe. "Jesus, Auntie," I said, and my voice was swallowed up by the dark. Everywhere I went was just more of the same, until I began to think that there really was nothing that Auntie Bells would have treasured. Her bedroom, the bathroom, the small guest room, all told the same story. A sad tale of an unhealthy woman who had let her mental illness run her life. Until I got to the attic. I tugged down the ladder, half expecting to be enveloped in a shower of trash, but it only opened into quiet darkness. I climbed up and poked my head into this small room. To my surprise, it was impeccably tidy. I finished ascending and flashed my light around with some confusion. Maybe she'd been too old to climb the ladder, and it had escaped her hoarding, I thought, but there was no dust up here, no spider webs or animal droppings. It was the only clean room in the house. It was also the most unsettling. Shelves lined every wall, and upon each rows of dolls sat, hand-stitched with big button eyes and wiry stalks of hair. They stared at me from every inch of open wall space. With my heart beating quickly, I slowly approached the nearest doll and crouched to get a better look at it. Although made of crude and rough material, the stitches were so neatly and so lovingly done that I knew Auntie Bells had done each one by hand. A little tag tied to the leg read, "Lyle Girl, 1943. The next had a similar tag, "Flanagan Boy, 1943. Down the row I went, reading each tag, one on each doll. Then when I reached the end, I gently picked up the last one in line. "Pearson Girl, 1947, I read. I weighed it in my hand, giving it a little squeeze. Inside, something small and hard rolled between my fingers. Curious, I began picking at one of those carefully crafted stitches until it finally fell away, and the doll split open. Wrapped in its stomach, partially obscured by a wad of cotton, was a tiny skull. I startled and dropped the doll, and it fell to the floor. The skull poked out of the slit in its side. Two little black eyes staring up at me. I stumbled away from it, making it all the way across the room until I slammed into the antique desk. From inside one of its drawers, I heard the faint tinkle of bells. I turned to it slowly, like I was afraid Auntie Bells would come rising up out of the drawer along with the sound. But of course it remained shut until I opened it. Her bracelets, wrapped in thin tissue paper, were sitting on top. Below them, a leather-bound ledger book, and what appeared to be old surgical tools were likewise wrapped. The sight of a pair of rusted clamps peeking out over that tissue paper was extremely disturbing. Shaken, but desperate for answers, I pushed the bells aside. They tinkled in protest. I threw the book open on the desk. The pages were full of precise, neat script, each one detailing names, dates, marital statuses, and months. It took me a moment to realize that each name belonged to a woman. Ellen Hardowitz. I ran my finger over the name of my spunky, forever gardening neighbor. I remembered how cold she had seemed when talking about Auntie Bells. January 13th, 1956. Married. 4 months. And beside it, Auntie Bells had added, girl. I turned again to face the room of button-eyed dolls and slowly approached the one lying on the floor. I knelt next to it and scooped it up again, ever so gently. I had never held anything so tiny or fragile in my hands before. For each one, Auntie Bells had told me once, but she hadn't ever said each of what. Now I was beginning to understand. I could see Auntie Bells so clearly, standing on the edge of crowds and watching the children so full of youth and life, never bothering anyone. Auntie Bells, who had lived her life alone, quiet and private. The exact kind of woman others would come to when they needed discretion. I replaced the doll on the shelf and stepped back. An entry in her ledger for every woman she had helped escape a motherhood they didn't want. A doll for every tiny body that would never draw breath. A bell for every baby so that Auntie would never forget any of them. I burned them all that night. The dolls in the ledger. I knew Auntie Bells wouldn't want anyone to know what she had done. I kept the bells, though, tucked away in an old shoebox in the back of my closet. I like to think she would have wanted them for me to keep them, to remember them in her place. Excuse me. Whenever I hear similar bells now, I think of her. Auntie Bells, who had no children of her own. No family, really, except those that she kept after their mothers couldn't.